Welcome to Awards Buzz. I'm Shadan Larki here with Dennis Berardi, the VFX Supervisor of Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. Dennis, I'm so happy to be chatting with you. Welcome. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for making the time. I'm happy to be speaking with you as well.
Well, my first question is that Frankenstein is the first project under the rebranded, relaunched Mr. X, your famed VFX studio. What does it feel like to have Frankenstein be the first?
I mean, it feels really good. Guillermo was talking with me about Frankenstein when we were doing The Shape of Water, so years ago, 10 years ago now. And he's been trying to make this film for many, many years since he was, well, for 40 years, he's been trying to make it. And it just took him he's been tinkering with the screenplay. He needed to get the screenplay right. I think he had to get the casting ideas sorted and then the design of the creature. A lot of things had to come together. And it kind of all culminated with me getting my original brand back, which I started way back in, like 2000s. And so it's lovely to have the confluence of that all happen. Guillermo's Magnum Opus and, kind of also 60 artists returned to the Mr. X, original Mr. X artist returns to the new company with me. And so it feels right, especially because Guillermo was a bit of a catalyst for it all.
Well, you really are one of the greats of the industry, and you gave an interview. I love you said that one of the biggest things about the project being on Netflix is that it allows more visibility for your crew. You have this 400 member incredible crew. Tell me about that a little bit more, and yeah, having more eyeballs on the incredible work that they did.
I mean, it's nice. Normally, the artists, I think visual effects artists are the unsung heroes of filmmaking, certainly modern day filmmaking. We are subjugated, we are last in the credits. Normally, they try and hide our contribution, and um, it's nice that on a film like Frankenstein, where we did 2 hours of visual effects, and there were 400 real humans involved in visual effects, which are also handmade. We don't just push buttons. We do craft this work, painstakingly craft this work. We use digital tools, but we're not using generative AI. We're using our own craft. A lot of us have developed over many years. We have artists and painters and traditionally trained artists and animators and um, these are real filmmakers. And the fact that this film um, it had a full theatrical release, it had an IMAX spin, and then it had a big wide release on Netflix. It kind of hit all the marks. We took the whole crew out to see the film in theaters as a little bit of a wrap party, and they were just so thrilled to see it on the big screen. But then, so that their families can see it, just hey, mom, dad, watch it on Netflix. Um, it was great. It was great. I'm happy for them. Like me, I think it was a high watermark. It was Guillermo's magnum opus, but it was also ours. We had to kind of bring a level of craft and creativity and kind of technological development and exploration that is rare and unique, and probably for me represents the epitome, like the pinnacle of my. I mean, I had to draw on everything I've learned for the last 30 years. I mean, when you're dealing with the likes of, our lovely partners on the film, Tamara Deverell, production designer, Dan Laushton, cinematographer, Kate Hawley, wardrobe, Mike Hill, creature designer, Jordan Samuel, Cleona Fury, like Miles Dale, like all these people that are at the top of their game. And we didn't want to let anybody down. We certainly didn't want to let Guillermo down. And moreover, we wanted to be a big part of the telling of the story. And if you look at it, we're involved in every scene. There's a either a small or big visual effects component. Our goal was to be completely. Our goal was to have the visual effects disappear into the storytelling, so that Guillermo's storytelling was pure, that his vision was realized in a way that he wanted, and that we didn't stand in the way of it in any way, but also we enabled it. And that's my goal, is to have enabled him, and and he's just a great conductor of these great artists, and I was just trying to make sure that, kind of channeling him and kind of offering creative solutions where we could, and then the artists at Mr. X and ILM and Ticket, because it wasn't just Mr. X, there was a couple of other companies involved, which were lovely artists there as well. And Ivan Buskets at ILM was the supervisor there, which was great. um, it was it was an experience of filmmaking that I haven't seen in a while, and that I may not see again for a while, given what's happening in the industry.
Well, Dennis, you certainly didn't let anyone down. Certainly not me. I'm like the biggest Frankenstein fan. But you mentioned, this sort of marriage of the practical and the digital. Can you tell me more about that? I mean, 1,300 VFX shots in Frankenstein. Tell me about how those two things came together.
They come together because we try to understand the story and the emotion and the content that Guillermo's trying to deliver, like the experience he's trying to deliver, and then we try and melt into that experience, and enable the experience. We had a few kind of like philosophical truths that we kind of wanted. It's, first of all, we're a period film, right? And we needed to tactily look and feel like a period film. And so period films, I mean, they're like, the idea was, not only was it a period film, but it didn't want to look like a modern version of a period film. Guillermo wanted it to look like it was filmed in the era, right? And so Kate Hawley was dyeing her own silks for wardrobe, and we were building as much as we could. I mean, listen, there's always going to be a lot of visual effects. It's Frankenstein. But the idea is, what can we do to base, the digital work in a photographic foundation? And we did that. We do have a lot of all digital shots, but they are, I feel, earned because everything around them is based photographically. And we did a lot of technical work to kind of survey sets with photogrammetric surveys, use modern tools like LiDAR and drone surveying to make sure that things looked photographically real. I worked very closely with Dan Lauschten, the cinematographer, to make sure that our visual effects were integrated into his photography. And so we shot a lot of references, everything, because he shot with a black Promise filter on a lot of things, and I wanted to be able to reproduce that exactly, this little gentle little glow that ends up on things. And so we shot a lot of references to make sure we were reproducing his look and the lighting. It was a single source lighting philosophy, which is very period, where you have one strong key source, and then you let things fall off, and there's not a lot of fill, and which is why I thought it would be important to shoot miniatures as well for the tower and the tower explosion, and you know, and Guillermo was a big proponent of that. And when I say miniatures, I mean our tower was over 25 feet tall. The miniature version of the tower was 25 feet tall. So, and we put it outside on an airfield and shot it outside and waited for the light to be perfect and then filmed it when it was perfect. Yes, did we enhance it and replace a lot of it digitally? Yes, but we wouldn't have gotten the result had we not done that. And and just dealing with someone like working with Dan, and you really get a sense of um, the sun's got to be in the right place. And he would just say, we're not filming this at 2 o'clock. The angle of the sun is not correct. We got to film it at about 4:30, where the sun is just off the horizon by this exact, like 35 degrees. And we would just wait for the light. And it was just really refreshing to work with someone who has the confidence and the craftsmanship and the just the patience to wait for the sun to be in the right place. And I learned a lot from that, because and with my you know working with the artists, tried to take that same philosophy that Guillermo and Dan, let's say, kind of, that philosophy from the onset approach to the digital realm is I caught myself doing the same sorts of things. It's like, well, we need to kind of look for reference in this animation. It's got to be grounded, and until we have it, I'm not going to present it to Guillermo, and just kind of letting the art develop a little bit and not just always pressurizing people, letting the art develop, letting it percolate, letting an artist do their best work. And that's a big part of my philosophy, and I hope it shows on screen.
Well, absolutely. And as I was watching the film, I did sort of think about, well, what's VFX, what's practical? I think it's so seamless that it's hard to tell. And I did foolishly think a lot of VFX was just somebody sitting behind a computer. So I so appreciate you taking the time to explain. Can you tell me more about that, of more sort of the blend of the practical and the VFX, and more examples of that? That's just fascinating. I had no idea about the miniatures and all of that.
I think a good example would be if you consider the opening of the film where we start out on the ice field and we first encounter the Horizon ship, which is stuck in the ice. And, Tamara Deverell, the production team, and her construction team, we decided that we wanted to have basically a one-to-one scale ship. We couldn't build it in the Arctic. Obviously, it's supposed to be in the northernmost part of the Arctic. Like their expedition is to the North Pole. So we built it in a front lot, sort of a parking lot on our state in front of our stages. And so although most of the ship is a physical build, which is great. So we built the bow, the port side, and the stern, and put it on a gimbal so that it could rock. But everything around it is essentially digital. But the reason it all looks integrated is because we use the best of both techniques. It wasn't all digital and it wasn't all practical. Like if we would have tried to go on a location to do it, I don't think we would have had the ability to build a ship that was one-to-one scale. And we may have had to use visual effects anyway. So we built a one-to-one scale ship in a parking lot. We did dress the immediate surroundings, but the rest of the world around it is digital, but the ship anchors it. But the funny thing is that the first 30 seconds of the movie is all digital. The opening of Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, where we're tracking along the ice, and then we tip up and then we see the ship. And so I'm pretty proud of that we start the film with one of the biggest visual effects. The first few frames of Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein is something that we created, and that started an Unreal Engine, a gaming, engine. And we gave Guillermo the ability to kind of do a virtual tour of the ice field that we had built. We took a lot of inspiration from reference photos from real Arctic excursions, period Arctic excursions. And of course, we went to North Bay and shot a lot of reference photography, which was a frozen over lake, um, and north of Ontario, in the north of Ontario, and between references that we studied and then real photography, um, we put all that into Unreal Engine to give Guillermo a bit of a sense of it, like a virtual sense of it, and he was we were excuse me, we were able to pre-visualize some of those shots so we can get a look and feel for things before we went to camera, and that was a lot of fun. And it gave him a sense of, okay, these are the shots we want. I mean, he had storyboarded most of the opening sequence, but when I put the virtual world in front of him and we were fishing for angles, it kind of came alive a little bit. And then we went to camera with main unit, with the actors and everything. Things all seemed to come together. We knew the plan was digital Arctic all around, real ship, but we extended the masts. And so, you're talking about the best of physical builds and production design, and I think the best of visual effects coming together. And I hope the audience doesn't see the difference. That was the whole point, is to just not get in the way of the emotion of it, and to hide the technique, is to use the best of every technique. And so the audience doesn't obviously see that it's digital or practical or what. It's just, hopefully an audience members lets the world wash over them, and enjoys the experience and doesn't do an eye roll. It's like, oh, that looks cheap, or that set looks cheap, or that's a bad visual effect, or that's bad CGI. Our goal was to have none of that. Where and we employed every filmmaking technique since the beginning of cinema, between construction and miniature photography and animation and visual effects, and obviously hair, makeup, costume, wardrobe, and these cameras, these Alexa cameras, and these great lenses, and Dan's lighting. I mean, we had period lights, and we had some of the most modern lights that are controllable on dimmers. Like every technology since the beginning of film, it was pretty interesting experience.
Mission accomplished, Dennis. Rest assured. I mean, it's really, really incredible. You mentioned something earlier, which is interesting, is like we are in this, I guess, I don't know, this weird transition phase within the industry. And I can tell this project, I won't call it a magnum opus. I'll say it's like a cornerstone of your career. I think you have lots of incredible things ahead, but like, what does it feel like to be in this moment? I mean, Guillermo has famously said, "Fuck AI." Like AI could never do what you do. Like, how do you feel about all of that, especially as you sort of sit in this reflective moment?
It's, I won't lie, it's worrisome. Um, my team and the artists, and especially young artists, and at you know great companies all over the world, are worried about generative AI replacing them. Um, and I think we have to come to grips with some level of fracturing, and that's going to happen in the industry. I think you'll find some studios and some producers saying, "Oh, I can just hire two or three people prompting and getting images," and but I think they're going to have a harsh reality there, a come to Jesus moment, where it's difficult to get consistent results. It's difficult to get iterations and directorial iterations. It's difficult to get continuity, and I think I think there's going to be a bit of a harsh reality for those. I mean, of course, we have to ultimately embrace it too. But on this film, Guillermo's like, "Listen, no AI in my movie, and let's just do this. Let's just do it by hand." And including the visual effects, they need to look and feel handmade, which they were. So we didn't use any generative AI for this film. And I think you would have seen it, you would have spotted it if we did. You would have just had one of those eye roll moments. And so I think the industry is at a crossroads. I think we'll probably see some fracturing, and Unfortunately, some companies may be struggling with it. I think that there's going to be a gravitation towards, the art of humans, made by humans for humans. I think you'll see the industry fracture that way, where you'll get what I'll say kind of some throwaway content, which I don't object to that being AI. But if you're working on a feature film or something that is trying to tell a human story and connect at a soulful level with human civilization, I still think you need humans to do it. Um, so I think you'll see a bit of a fracturing where there'll just be part of the industry that just goes AI and part of it that doesn't. And I want to be the part that doesn't, you
Yeah.
know, meaning I don't want to be an AI first creator of content. I'd like to employ AI more as a last resort than a first choice. And I mean, there's no denying that there are some AI tools that help with coding, let's say Python coding and excuse me, rotoscoping and things like that do take the monotony out of the work. And I'm not against that. And we are exploring with a lot of those tools at Mr. X, as are most companies. And if they're not, I think they risk being left behind. But specifically for Frankenstein, per Guillermo's mandate, we didn't do any generative AI, and I'm proud of that. And it was best filmmaking experience of my life, and I guarantee you for 400 artists that worked on the film.
Yeah. Dennis, you very graciously gave me your time after a long day's work. Is there anything that I didn't touch on in this interview that you'd like to mention?
Now you touched on some really important topics, and I appreciate you going there. It's great.
Well, I certainly appreciate your time and everything that you've done for the craft, and I just wish you the best of luck. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate the time.